Okay, I see Cassie's live. Are you there, Cassie?
I'm here.
So cool. All right, I misunderstood how it works. We'll wait on Angie, I guess.
Atlanta Real Estate Realness.
Yes, welcome to Atlanta Real Estate Realness. We have got the contract queen herself coming back to grace us with her queenly wisdom. And once she gets on here, we will get started. Oh, there she is. Hello, Angie. Are you
There she
there?
is.
Is that our queen, our contract queen?
Yes, how are you guys?
Good morning, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks
It's
for taking
great
the
to be
time
with you
out.
again.
Same here.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of stuff going on, obviously, as Cassie, Angie, and I all know, regardless of which part of real estate you're in. And so I thought we could be graced by the queen herself, and she could come back and maybe weigh in on a couple of the issues. The main one I've been seeing is this NAR antitrust lawsuit, which is so convoluted and it's been going on for years, and there's different angles to it, and blah 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 blah. I guess selfishly, I'm curious how it will affect Georgia real estate. But first, let's introduce ourselves. I guess I'll start. I'm Amber Rogers. I'm a real estate associate broker and active realtor with HomeSmart International, formerly Palmer House. And I'll put all of our info in the link. But go ahead, Cassie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. This is Cassie Fuchs. I'm with Southeast Mortgage, lender extraordinaire. Been doing this for about 18 years. And yeah, just love to get on with great realtors and discuss the market, and excited to see Angie again.
Thank you. So I'm Angie Meza-Smith, and I am the managing broker for Keller Williams Realty Heart of Atlanta Group.
Yay.
And
Yay, congrats.
Thank you. And I've been doing this for 24 years. I'm also the owner of RE School of Georgia, which specializes in teaching very substantive, I'd like to say, very substantive continuing education courses for real estate professionals in Georgia.
Can't wait to get on your next class. When is it coming out?
I have a couple coming up, so I'll have to send you those links so you can share them with everyone. But would you like for me to kind of jump in on this whole?
Please,
yes,
please. And let me just give a quick Cliff's Notes, so people that maybe aren't, maybe you could do the Cliff's Notes on what it is in a bulletproof. But I just wanted to say, like, what is it?
Okay.
And how is it going to affect Georgia agents and buyers and sellers?
Okay, so basically what happened was there was apparently a Department of Justice investigation a couple of years ago. And what they found was that there were widespread sprinkled across many different real estate brokerages. And the common thread that these real estate brokerages had in common was that they were members of the National Association of Realtors, which prompted the Department of Justice to go after the single common thread, which was the National Association. And they said there's unfair trade practices, which are federally controlled, such as agents boycotting listings and not showing them to buyers based on the amount of co-op commission being offered. MLS,
that's a big no-no.
Right. MLS is saying that you can't be a member of our MLS if you're not a member of the Board of Realtors, which is a private trade organization.
Right.
You can't be issued a lockbox if you're not a member of this and this and that. So that lawsuit came close to settling. The settlement didn't work out, and there was a motion, and NAR kind of won round one. But what's happened as a result of that lawsuit is that there's additional class action lawsuits now being filed against particular brokerages, large franchises.
In Texas, right, is the biggest one.
Well, there's a couple, but there's class action lawsuits against groups that are basically representing sellers as a pool, saying that, these practices are not fair to sellers, because what the implication is that the sellers are being told, well, you absolutely must offer a co-op commission to a buyer's broker as a part of your listing agreement with your listing broker. That's actually not legally true.
That's a big no-no to say that too, because it's all negotiable, right, Angie?
Everything's negotiable, and there is no
set commission.
There's no set commission, and there's no obligation to pay another broker anything. It's just that if you're not going to do that, you have to be very honest and very transparent about it. So it's difficult because it's a double-edged sword. So in essence, when a buyer buys the property, they are actually paying the commission because they are
Yeah,
paying for it in the list price.
which is
So
coming out of the net to seller, because the seller is going to get less if he's offering a buyer brokerage fee, right? Sorry to interrupt. Just
correct,
trying to
but
make it dumb down.
correct. But the whole implication is, in essence, it's being financed in. So in essence, this has been a cost that the seller is factoring into the overall list price.
Sure.
Okay. So now what's going to happen, and this has been murmuring for years, but these lawsuits are actually causing it to happen a much more accelerated pace. We have to educate ourselves as agents how to have those conversations with sellers
Yeah.
about whether it is in their best interest or not to offer the buyer brokerage commission co-op at whatever negotiable amount, and whether that might be something that they want to do, because it's very helpful to the buyer. Because if the buyer has a buyer's agent that is representing them and they are obligated to pay that, then they have to come up with that money over and above closing costs, over and above down payment, over and above everything else. And that could be a big hindrance to a buyer. So it could be a very big incentive to a buyer. So
I see.
as far as buyer brokerages go, we have to certainly just be very, 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 very transparent. We have to explain to the buyers how we earn our money, and that they are ultimately the one hiring us, and they're ultimately the one responsible for paying the commission. And there's a lot of different ways to accomplish this. So, for example, there's this new special stip that was just written and drafted by the lead counsel, Seth Weissman, who prepares the Georgia Association of Realtor Contracts. And it's basically a special stip where a buyer, not an agent, that's a whole different conversation, but agents can't use purchase and sale agreements to negotiate their
Oh, yeah. They
co-op
should
account
never
with
be able
other
to
agents.
do that.
Right,
Yeah.
because that could be a license law violation. But
Yeah.
this is a special step where the buyer is saying, listen, seller, I'm the buyer and I've got a contract with my buyer agent and I'm obligated to pay that. But I've also got to come up with a down payment, and I've also got to come up with closing costs, and I've also got to come up with all this.
Yeah.
I'm asking you, seller, would you pay this commission? As part of this overall negotiation, would you pay that
Oh, I
commission?
didn't know
Because I'm going to
that
have
there's a
to.
new step. That's amazing.
It just came out literally days ago. So we
Wow.
have that in our arsenal. We also have new language in the purchase and sale agreement, closing cost paragraph that says that if the buyer were to negotiate closing cost, that the seller pay closing cost, that the closing cost could be, if buyer directed their lender and if lender approved, to use those closing costs to pay buyer's commission obligations.
Oh,
This
cool.
language was added largely not only because they could see that this trend was happening with the NAR lawsuit, but also because VA buyers, and Cassie can speak to this some more. VA buyers are not allowed to pay buyer
Right.
agency commissions. So again, I think that it's just going to require us
It's a
to
lot.
all up our game and be totally transparent. Everybody's just got to understand, number one, there is no set commission. There is no
Correct.
obligation for one particular person to pay anything, certainly not a set amount. And we all must be super, super transparent to everyone about who's paying what and how much it is. And we cannot boycott listings based on whether a co-op commission is being offered or not, or the amount thereof. So
I do have
all of that's got to
I
be
have
fair.
a question about that actually.
Okay.
So, no, you can't boycott,
Gosh, no.
but if you know that your buyer doesn't have the additional funds to pay all of these payments, right? So if they don't have the funds to pay the 3% on top. Sorry, there's a lot of noise. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that is.
Me neither.
Sorry, me neither.
So if the buyer doesn't have the funds that would be necessary to pay for the commission for their agent, then an agent wouldn't necessarily want to take them to see a house that they ultimately wouldn't have the funds to pay for,
They
correct?
still have to
Well,
take them. Have to. Right, Angie?
you
Right.
have to show them this and let them make that choice. You have to show them not necessarily you have to show them the actual listing, and not remove that from their showing based on you're making that judgment call. They're the adult that signed that buyer brokerage agreement obligating themselves. And like I said, if it ends up that they're like, wait, I just don't have all this money, then again, that all can be negotiated with seller. Can you help offset some of this cost? Buyer broker, can you reduce that amount of the commission that I agreed to pay just to make the deal work? Co-op agent, there's a co-op agent commission agreement that you could present before you even show the property. There's lots of different ways to deal with it. What you can't do is make that choice. And this is where the DOJ says absolutely cannot. You
Right.
cannot make that choice for
For
the
them.
buyer. It's like you signed that buyer brokerage agreement. You offered
Hopefully.
to hire me, but again, everything is negotiable. But this one's going to be expensive, and this one could potentially be cost you more out of pocket. But if you want it, let's just dive in and try to make that work. And they need to be the one to make that choice. It's the problem is, Cassie, is that agents were just plucking it out because that's the easy button. And
So
that way
unethical.
it's
Well,
it's
I
all
get
about me.
that. I get that, but I also, we're setting up our buyers sometimes
Correct.
in these situations to be very frustrated
Oh yeah,
because if you're, as an agent, you're also trying to limit the amount of frustration that your buyer is going to have in these situations. And if you know going in that they're not offering closing costs. I mean, I have agents who may not show a house because they're not even offering any closing costs. And that particular buyer is absolutely needing closing costs to get to the table. And why would we put our buyer in a situation to go look at a house that ultimately they're not going to be able to get
right.
It's
get
kind of
into? I
like
mean,
getting them pre-qualified. Nobody's getting in my car, or I'm not wasting their time until I know that they've talked with Cassie, they know what they can afford. Why get them in love with a home that maybe they could have even gotten a better home, 100 grand more, but they don't know because they're not pre-qualified. It's the same onus that falls on agents to have a proper
Absolutely.
pre-showing consultation, explain what a buyer brokerage engagement is, explain how it works, give them the option. And then any house they see, I tell them, even if it's for sale by owner, call me. But then when we talk about it, I make sure they know that I don't work for free either. So they
Correct.
signed that broker agreement. And if it's a for sale by owner, for example, they drive through a neighborhood at a yard sale, they see it's for sale by owner, they love the house, and that for sale by owner doesn't have an agent, doesn't want to pay a buyer agent, then I give them the option. Do you want me to help you through the transaction? If so, let me call the seller, see if they're willing to offer something. Whatever it is, there's always ways around it. But the key is, you can't just not disclose, and you can't just pick for
Correct.
them. Oh, we're not going to
Yeah,
go see that one because I'm making a
correct. Because
whatever
that
percent
will
there a
markup.
way?
invariably
Okay,
fall off
one
of your
last
face.
one
So
last question.
Sure.
I get all
One
mad
last
about this.
question. So, if you have a conversation, a consult with that buyer up front, and you talk them through all of this, right? You say, okay, you're limited in the amount of funds that you have. So I want to let you know this is what's happening in the market. They're not going to be paying agent. There's going to be certain houses that don't, pay this or pay that or not offering that. If the buyer at that time says, well, I don't want to be put in a situation where I have to get those funds because I don't have them, then at that point, could there be some sort of discussion in the fact that they decided they didn't want to see homes that were like this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. In a case like that, the attorney that I was just speaking about that with one of my dear, brilliant attorney friends who also works for the Weissman Law, who represents GAR. And she said, if you have a scenario like that, then that would need to be stipulated in the buyer brokerage agreement where the buyer's hiring and saying
that's a great idea
that
too.
I do not want the buyer agent to show me properties where that are being advertised with offering zero commission, thus obligating me to pay the full commission, or zero closing costs, or whatever. And whatever those conditions are, it needs to be stipulated and agreed in the buyer brokerage agreement that the buyer is specifically requesting their buyer agent to omit those properties that don't have those incentives offered for the buyer.
Can
And
I throw
that's,
the
I
ball to
mean,
Cassie?
that's
Oh,
a
sorry, go
great,
ahead.
at least go ahead. What I'm
No,
saying
I
is
would say
that's at least a way that you can.
legally everyone's on the same page that way. Yeah.
But for the most buyers, and I realize that most buyers, the best practice is to not have that limited thing, because even though agents will advertise in an MLS that there's no closing costs, there's no whatever, everything is truly negotiable. And the minute you omit what might be the perfect house, from a buyer, the buyer then sees that on Zillow or somebody else shows it to them or whatever. And sure enough, the seller is once presented with the option of a special stip to cover the cost of the commission, or closing costs being paid. Anything can happen. Maybe the seller's already had a couple deals fall through. Maybe there's some inspection and defects that have reared their ugly head. Maybe the seller's not getting as much activity as they would like. So that's why just limiting things out of the gate rather than diving in and trying and kind of taking it on a case by case basis would be, I would discourage that. But could that be agreed to in a buyer brokerage agreement? Yes. Would I recommend that right out of the gate? No, because it's just like when I
Gotcha.
teach
Everything's
advanced
negotiable.
contracts, everything's
Well,
negotiable,
could they call like ahead, instead of taking a person to a house, having them fall in love with it, and then trying to negotiate it and it not come through? Would it be better for the agent that to reach out to the listing agent and say, hey, I have buyers who are interested in this home and would like to come see it. However, this is going to be a sticking point for them financially. Before I even show them the house, is it something that's negotiable?
Absolutely, but the buyer needs to be aware of the house,
Right.
and you don't need to make that decision based on that conversation
Right.
with the agent. You need to say, "Hey, this is the situation. There could be challenges with this one, and I don't want to put you through that, but I don't want to deny you seeing this house and trying and going for it."
Absolutely, yeah.
And
With
it's
the
super
buyer's
prudent.
knowledge.
Yeah, it's super prudent of the agent. You shouldn't be showing a house anyway without having called that listing agent, especially the past couple of
Right.
years, because some of them were even under contract
Oh, of
before you
course.
could even get out the door. So any agent that goes and wastes their client's time on a Saturday when they could be at a baseball game with their kiddo, driving them around from house to house and then finding out later that it's under I call every agent before each showing and text them, and I make
Texting,
sure it's
Yeah, just
available. Text is the
absolutely.
best. And then at least I know the situation, and if they've got any offers on the table before I go get them in love with the house and find out they're under contract and they've been under contract,
but absolutely,
whatever it might be.
Or find out if they have, if
basically
they already have.
multiple offers. Go ahead.
No, what I was saying is if you find out that, you call and they say, yeah, we've got multiple offers with no for this type of concession, then you can at least let the buyer know, okay, so we can go see the house. I want you to see it if you want, but just know that this is what you may be up against. They may not negotiate on this because they do have multiple not asking for that concession.
And honestly, it's all about us just upping our game, and as true professionals, upping your game on the value that you bring as a buyer agent and helping weed through all these negotiations. And I just attended a presentation last week about the state of the industry, and it was really alarming about the value that different generations see from their buyer brokers. And one of the main overwhelming largest percentages that the value is that the buyers that are hiring buyer brokers is things like the inspection and the repair terms of the contract
Aspect.
once they're under contract. And there's all different kinds of statistics, but like 47% of the reason for hiring a buyer broker was to help with the negotiations. And that a lot of that had to do with repairs, but it was also just negotiations in general. And so we have to remember that is an overwhelming value add. So we're just those of us who are like Amber, who are out there, who are top professionals and really take their job very, very seriously, or constantly seeking to learn. Those are the agents that are going to, really flourish and continue to flourish, even though there's additional parts that maybe have to be negotiated a little bit differently than they used to be.
And I think there's a different skill
Yeah, another
set,
thing
obviously, for that. Yeah, go ahead.
and another thing to keep in mind, yeah, you using those closing costs to pay for the broker payment. That's a great idea, but you do have to remember that different loans are limited by different percentages of closing costs, right? So if you're looking at a conventional loan, you can only get 3% for closing costs.
Correct.
So if you use that negotiation to pay that commission, you will not get any other of your closing costs paid for. You have to pay for those on your own.
That is correct. And that's why it's going to be handy in cases where the buyer is okay and they weren't going to necessarily ask for closing costs, but they are going to use their closing costs in that capacity, or a portion of them. Maybe it's only 0.5% of the purchase price. Maybe it's not a full 3%, but there's at least that ability to do it. But then I was just talking to my attorney friend, and she said this new special step where the seller is being asked by the buyer, listen, seller, I'm disclosing to you that I have a buyer broker that I hired, and I owe them a commission unless there's a commission being paid by you. And could you pay the commission so that it offsets me having to pay this commission myself? If that special step is in there, and if the seller is actually paying the co-op commission as a directly to the buyer broker, then closing cost could just go towards closing cost, and they wouldn't be seen by the lender. They wouldn't be seen by the lender as the seller concession for the buyer. The way so that special step, and I can certainly send that to Amber. I can send that to you, but it's going to be a really handy special step in the new climate we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. So that's great. I mean, it's great to have that knowledge, because we don't get to hear about it as much on our side, but it definitely affects our buyers quite a bit.
Angie, you're the one that hears about it when it goes sideways. She's the one that's putting out the fire from these things that are happening in real time. So that's why we love having her on here, because I didn't know there's a new step. It literally just got passed, she said. So until she does her next CE class, continued education class, I wouldn't have known that. So that's amazing. And that would save them a lot of money and potentially get a deal done that wouldn't have gotten done.
And Amber, I'm sending you that special step right now.
Please. Amazing. Thank you.
Sending it to you.
Can you send it over to me, Amber? I'd love to see it.
Sure.
I'm sending it to both of you, actually.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Both of you. So, and that's coming from the Seth Weissman, who's the general counsel for the Georgia Association of Realtors, and they, of course, are the authors of the GAR forms, which are the most,
and the Red Book of Real Estate, right?
Yes.
I don't know if people know that. No, they're so good. They're like top notch. And Angie works right alongside them. Angie, have you seen any crazy cases lately? Like that you've had to judge on or rule on, rather?
Well, I mean, there's always crazy cases.
Every day.
There is no case more important to us right now than the cases with the class action lawsuits.
Sure.
affecting our way of doing business. What do I think is going to happen? I think what we're going to see is, and this is also a big deal, right now, being a member of the National Association of Realtors is an all or nothing membership, meaning that a brokerage that has a firm license number and has, say, 100 agents, that brokerage has to join the National Association of Realtors, but they can't just join the national. They have to join through the local board, like the Atlanta board, and then they join the state portion, which is in this case GAR, Georgia Association, and then through that they join the national. So that's the pathway for membership, but you can't henpeck and choose. Some of your agents are realtors and some are not. If, as a company, you are going to be a member of the Board of Realtors, then all your licensees have to be a member.
Oh, I didn't know that.
One of the big changes that we're seeing in these settlements with RE/MAX and with Anywhere Real Estate, which encompasses Coldwell Banker, Century 21, ERA, Sotheby's.
It was Realogy, right? Wasn't it Realogy owned before?
It used to be Realogy, yes. It used to be known as Realogy. So what they're saying is, as franchises, as large franchises, who says, listen, the hamburger's got to be the same throughout the whole country. And so therefore, every one of our franchisees has to be a member of the National Association of Realtors, which means they all have to join their local boards and so on. Therefore, all of their agents are realtors. They are now, as a part of their settlement, and this is huge, they're not going to require all their franchisees to be realtors. So now, for the first time, you're going to see, and again, I don't know how this is going to end up, where franchisees that are operating under the name Century 21 or ERA or RE/MAX are all going to either have the ability as a firm, a brokerage, regardless of the fact that they are a franchisee of that big brand, to either have that firm be a member of the Board of Realtors or not. The other change, and this is all part of the reason that the DOJ got involved years ago to begin with, is, part of the reason why so many brokers are members of the National Association of Realtors and the local boards is because the local boards own and operate and control the MLSs, and they own the local MLSs. So traditionally, if you wanted to go down and practice real estate in Savannah, even though you have a Georgia real estate license, you could not practice for any actual substantive usefulness in Savannah unless you joined the Savannah MLS and got a lockbox key or lockboxes that would work in Savannah. But you would have to be a member of the Savannah Board of Realtors in order to join the Savannah MLS. Okay. Well, suppose that you were licensed with a non-realtor firm. So then your firm then has to become a member of the Board of Realtors, and all the agents in the firm have to become a member of the Board of Realtors just so you can join the Savannah MLS, because otherwise you can't join the Savannah Board of Realtors.
Wow. I can see why the DOJ would think that's a monopoly. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. This is what caused a problem. And I'll tell you, there are independent firms in Metro Atlanta, such as what is now known as HomeSmart, but formerly known as Palmer House, is one of them. And there's several others that they have sister firms. They have a realtor firm, and then they have a sister firm that's a non-realtor firm. But they're able to do that in Metro Atlanta. And the reason they're able to do that in Metro Atlanta is because FMLS and Georgia MLS are the two largest MLSs, and they are not controlled. Their membership base is not controlled by the Board of Realtors. So therefore, 40%, give or take, of their members are non-realtor brokerages.
Sure.
So, but if you go outside of Metro Atlanta or you go to Florida, there's no such thing. If you go to Florida, every major brokerage is going to be a member of the local Board of Realtors, and agents are looking at, for their board dues, because I'm a licensed broker in Florida, for their board dues as well as their MLS up front every year, all in one, about $1,200 right out of the gate. And
ours is like 800.
But try to practice and run a real estate brokerage and try to practice without access to an MLS or access to lockboxes or access to lockbox keys. Try to do that. You won't be able to. Yet
Mhm.
it's a private trade organization that has nothing to do with your license. So this is another layer of what caused all this to come about.
So interesting.
So
That
makes
is.
sense,
That's
doesn't it?
Hmm. I'm glad that
Yeah,
they're calling it out
absolutely.
and separating church and state. I think it's only fair. Cassie,
So
what do you think about the $0? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no. I was just agreeing with you, Amber. I mean, there were
It's a little bit too tight
definitely
there.
there were a little bit of problems. For instance, if you wanted to go and show a house in Macon, if you weren't a member of the Macon MLS, they could say to you, Amber, that the listing is in Macon MLS and we're offering a 3% co-op fee, but because you're not a member of our MLS, that you're not eligible for that 3% co-op fee.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
not
and by the
that's a
way,
little too
Amber,
fuzzy.
your lockbox key is not going to open our
Oh
lockbox.
my gosh. Yeah, no, I would have had a heyday yelling at that broker.
Right, right.
Well, now I'm seeing all these other gimmicky things, like supposedly Zillow's offering a 1% mortgage rate. What's up with that, Cassie? Any enlightenment on that one? I'm
Well,
sure there's tons of fine print.
it's not a
How is that even
1% rate.
possible?
It's not a 1% rate. They're offering a
Their
1%
headline
down
says. Oh,
program. So
got it.
so a 1% down payment. So what they're doing is they require the buyer to have 1% down, and then they're going to give 2% in closing cost. So if you're a first time home buyer, you're in a conventional mortgage, you have a 97% loan, you pay the 1% down and they pay the additional 2%. But it sounds
It's a
great.
little
It's
gimmicky.
awesome. They started in Arizona, but there's always a catch, right?
I'm glad you clarified that because I
So
misread it. I'm like 1%. Like
yeah.
who can do that?
So it's limited to, you have to make below 80% the median income for each county. So truthfully, most people who are buying houses right now make more than 80% of the median income to buy a house. And so what it kind of turns into a little bit of a bait and switch. So the, low mortgage person gets you on the phone. You can, oh yeah, great program. You go get under contract. They come back and you say, oh wait, you don't qualify. Your income is too high, because Zillow doesn't actually pre-approve anyone. They just let you contract and then they pick up the pieces. So then another issue is that the rate is higher. So really what this lender is doing is they're offering a lender credit. And in order to lender credit, when we lock rates, a rate that is at what we call par, which is you don't pay for the rate and you don't get any money out of the rate. It's just right at par. Well, we lock you at a rate lower, you're going to have to pay some money, and that's called buying points. You pay the points to get that rate. If you lock a rate higher, money comes out of that, and the lender can't keep that money, but they can give it to you in what we call a lender credit. So all they're doing is offering a higher interest rate, using those funds to give you that quote 2%. So the final thing that they're not really telling you about is that there's a $4,000 cap on this lender credit.
Oh
So
Lord.
if you're buying a house for $200,000, yep, you can get that 2% from them. But anything over that, you're just getting $4,000 from that lender. So it's just a gimmicky way to get people under contract, and then they end up switching to a different program, or they end up deciding they'd rather a rate, all the different things. It's just a gimmick, right? There's also, this is not the first type of program like it's, of its type. There's other programs, like we have the Flex 101 program that people, if you're in a 97 loan, we do a 3% second and give a lender credit for that towards closing costs. Well, there's also the Chenoa, which is 100%. And, all of these programs are higher interest rates because they're getting you to the table with very little down payment. So they're obviously a little bit more risky. It's just a gimmick, honestly, just to get people through the door.
I hear ya.
Well, Thank you for explaining that, Cassie, because I don't know
Been
about
all
Amber,
over.
but I did not understand exactly how that worked, and I knew there had to be a catch, but
Hmm.
I didn't know if it was just being tacked onto the end of the loan, but this whole locking the rate at a higher thing again, like you said, there's no free lunch, so but
Yeah.
Never.
buyer is actually ultimately going to pay for it either way you slice it.
You just got to go
That's right.
local. And I can't sing Cassie's praises enough. Having a local lender, I know where she works. My buyer knows where she works. She's transparent. She's there on the phone with him on a Saturday night when she's in the middle of a dinner, because she's always local. The local people hire local appraisers. It's just a much smoother, the whole process is much smoother, and you know that they're on your side, and you end up using them again and again and again down the line because they know your area, they know who you are, and you know them, and could run into them at Publix. But the rates that they are able to provide are more transparent. It's not this whole bait and switch. Let's get all your info in our database so that we can now do a mortgage operation arm, and now we can do an insurance operation arm, and now we can do Zillow Homes where we're our own brokerage and putting homes on the MLS after we give you a cash offer, which is really just our wholesaling arm through our hedge fund arm. I
And
mean, it
yeah,
becomes a lot.
that's another point is when people are getting this program, they are then transferred to a Zillow agent. So if your clients wanting this program, you got to be careful
They have to
because
use
if
a
you
Zillow
don't have,
agent.
yeah, they'll end up with a Zillow agent based on getting this program.
And nothing against Zillow agents, but I do know, firsthand because they wanted me to be a sales manager when they opened the Atlanta office and I interviewed. They're all straight salary. So think about it. If your agent is straight salary, sitting pretty on, I don't know what they make, 50 grand a year, whatever, and they're happy with it, then what's their incentive to go and get you that house and hold your hand? And what's their incentive to be polished on their negotiation skills and level up with their sales training and contract knowledge and all of that? It's just interesting.
You make a great point, Amber,
And that's
because
where Angie comes in.
you make a great point because again, they're going to get paid whether you get a good deal or you're well taken care of or not.
That's right.
Yeah, crazy.
So
I'd
they
rather
don't
work
have
for
to
my food.
necessarily earn it every time.
Yeah.
And agents that work on a commission basis, you guys are getting out there having to earn that client and earn that repeat business and earn that referral and work your tail off to get that thing to close, or else you don't get paid. So there's
And or else
definitely
they
something.
hate you and tell all their friends not to use you. That would be the worst. That would be the worst egg on my face, honestly. It's not even about, I don't even think about the money, and I know
Right.
that's horrible because my mom gets on to me all the time. Why are you cutting your commission? Well, I don't think about the money. I think about the outcome, and I'm like, okay, this is a long play. This isn't just like, let me just run this little sprint. Like if I intend to have a career long term, just like Cassie, just with Angie, you have to build the right relationships. You have to be an honest person, and you have to do right by people, and just one bad review could destroy me. So it's like you want to do right by people anyway, but it's
Absolutely.
incentivizing when you're straight commission. What do y'all think about the market, Angie?
I'm
That's a
surprised to
loaded
see
question.
sellers that are out there. Although I know that demand is still high and inventory is still low, what I'm seeing is some sellers kind of struggling to get their properties under contract. Not in every case, of course, but I'm just kind of surprised by that because we still have such low inventory and demand is still pretty high. So, sellers are having to definitely make sure that they're priced right and that their property's in good condition and things like that. So it's
Well, the
not
rate
just a
hikes doesn't help, and Cassie can speak to
rate
that, but
drive. The
it's
rate
also
rate hikes
seasonal too
absolutely
right
do not
now.
help. It is, and this is the time of
Super
year
micro.
where you see a softening in the overall price negotiation and a slowing.
Buyer pool.
So summer and your spring are obviously peak times. But
Mhm.
we also, by the same token, you also see other properties that, again, it's all location and condition and price and all of those same things still will matter at the end of the day, because demand is still high and there is still low inventory. So sellers still need to compete with other active listings on price and condition. And if you can't compete on location, you've got to compete on price and condition.
Yep. 3 reasons why a home doesn't sell: price, condition, location.
Right.
Can't change your
Right.
location unless you want to pick up your home if it's a mobile home on wheels. Can't change your, or you can change your condition, but who wants to deal with contractors and tile colors that your buyer might hate anyway? But
Right.
you can change your price and you can be more fair to reflect what the market's expectations are at
And
that
you can
given
improve the
time
condition. And a lot of people don't
and improve
realize
the condition.
sometimes,
We've been so
sometimes
spoiled.
yeah, sometimes just super clean, super decluttered is if you can't afford all the renovations, just having basic defects repaired and having the house clean and clutter free as possible. Things like that help people envision things that could be done to improve it. But if the house is in ill repair or it's overly cluttered or it's just dirty, a lot of people will just take 2 steps in the door, turn around, and walk right back out. Same thing with the yard,
Yes,
So,
yard is everything. It's their
you
first
have to,
impression.
yeah, and unfortunately, we can't do much about it. But sometimes it's your neighbor's yard. So when you
Yeah.
get into a lot of these price points where there's either no HOA in certain areas that's controlling that, or there's a very loose HOA where nothing's really enforced. Sometimes that's tough because if your neighbors, are not keeping toys and car parts and things out of their yards, that makes it challenging for you trying to sell your
I
house.
know.
So
I've had to be
it's
very
all of those
strategic
things
with
factor in.
neighbors. So,
So
Cassie, what do you think? Do you think the rates will keep going up a little bit and then soften a little bit? I know that's the top of it.
Well, I mean, we have seen a bit of a softening, not enough to make, any major news, but
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is whenever there's any kind of conflict, war, any of that happens, it generally is actually good for rates. I know that sounds strange, but it
No, that
is.
makes sense.
So as things develop over in the Middle East, I think that we watching that closely to see if that changes the market up more for us. But again, yeah, it's a little bit better pricing right now, but not enough to really speak of.
Well, maybe I'll wrap it up then. Does anyone have an absolutely yes or an absolutely not?
um,
Tag, you're it, Angie. What's your absolutely not? I'm sure you can give us a million of them.
we
Agents do wrong, buyers, sellers do wrong.
we absolutely do not want to ever say that a commission, whether we're saying it to a buyer or a seller client, that a commission is required or that there is an industry standard or a customary amount. So we do not want to ever do anything that appears that we are price fixing.
I was about to say, isn't
Everything's
that price
negotiable.
fixing?
Yeah, but
Right.
unfortunately, this is some of the behavior that is now, being attacked in these lawsuits and alleged in these lawsuits. So we've just got to be careful because I've actually heard this come out of agents' mouths, and there is no such thing as a standard. There's no customary. There's no industry standard. When you're trying to negotiate for your commission, you can certainly negotiate for what you believe that you're willing to work for. You work on a contingency basis, but to imply to a client that this is what the expectation is as an industry, big mistake.
That's
That's an
what got us
absolutely
in
not.
trouble in the first
And
place.
my absolutely, that's right. And my absolutely must is be transparent. Be very transparent about how you earn your money. Be transparent about who's paying what and how much they're paying. Do not ever try to make that decision for a client. Be transparent.
Absolutely.
Disclosure,
I agree.
disclosure, disclosure, right?
And so,
And then Angie, what's your other quote? Oh, sorry. I have to have Angie say her quote.
Life's all about choices.
Correct. We'll try to make the right
life's all
ones.
about
Go ahead,
choices.
Cassie.
I agree. So I'm just having absolutely due for this is for agents as well as buyers, but really for my agents, I really want you to do your research. Whenever you see the newfangled program, the new something out for buyers that you think is just going to blow them away, amazing, just do some research. Go look at the fine print. The best way to do it is, just Google the information and look and see what other people found out about it, at least, But start sending it out to all your client database. Just make sure you do the research, because it usually, if something sounds too good to be true, it really is.
Yep. I have a friend who's in the same coaching program with me, and he's you've probably heard of him, Frederick Eklund. He's on he's not like my best friend or anything, I wish, but we're friendly, and he always says GTS. It's like a New York thing. Apparently everyone in Manhattan and New York City says GTS, man. And so now I've started saying it to my mom when she'll call me and be like, how do I fix this light bulb? I'm like, GTS, it means Google that shit.
I love it.
I just thought that's so funny, because it's like, or Google that stuff. We'll say stuff. Google that stuff, because it's like, in today's world, like, it's not that hard to be informed on any. You don't have to go to college. You can learn a trade. You can learn. I just rewired my whole kitchen. You can learn anything on YouTube. So my absolutely yes is keep buying and selling, people, because guess what? Rates may or may not go up and down, but if you got to move, you got to move. And you just need a good team behind you. And it does take a village sometimes to get your client across the closing day, whether it's the seller or the buyer. I have a great lawyer. I have a great lender, Cassie. I've got a great mentor, Angie. And it really, and law firms are important. You want to have someone with good legal. Yeah. And so besides having a skilled agent, and then my absolutely not is don't fall prey to the doomsdayers. I always say this. There's so many doomsdayers, and it's all clickbait, you guys. Like, kind of like the Zillow $0, or I think it said 0 1 week, and now it says 1% mortgage. But if you read the actual article, as Cassie did, unlike me, then you'll realize that that's not actually the case. It would be impossible anyway with the Fed. But so when it seems like doom and gloom, and the world is hard enough as it is with war and inflation and all of this stuff, like, just be, prudent and read through things. And also don't think that you have to sit on the sidelines. Like, Cassie's doing a buy down rate program for a couple new home buyer clients of mine. And there's always a creative way to get you over the finish line.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you guys.
I had
for
a
your
great
time
time with
went
you,
way
ladies.
over. I love y'all.
Thank you so
We
much.
always
I've
do,
always
though.
enjoyed.
Well, Angie's such a plethora of knowledge. It's hard not to be like, wait, tell me more. Tell me more.
I know.
Thank
Thank you for
so
your
much.
time, ladies. And I'll send you everything, and I'll post your information, and we will move from there. Everybody have a good day.
Everybody have
Bye,
an awesome
lady.
day.
Thanks, darlings. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.